What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm absolutely honored to introduce you all to monarch and organized abuse survivor, overcomer and thriver, loving mother, former private investigator and investigative journalist for News of the World, Sunday Times best-selling writer and author, accredited psychotherapist, remote viewer, multi-dimensional life guide, podcaster, podcast host, and content creator, and an inspirational bridge between worlds, Christine, or Chris, Joanna Hart. A little bit about Christine and what we will be talking about on today's episode. Born into a world of secrecy and trauma, Christine's early years were marred by her time in a Catholic orphanage and a subsequent adoption by a family tied to the Vatican. Her childhood was not just challenging, it was a crucible of abuse and manipulation, later revealed to be linked to monarch government mind control. These early experiences, buried beneath layers of trauma and dissociation, shaped her path in ways she would only uncover later. Her ability to navigate this darkness, coupled with her innate intelligence, propelled her into a career that blended journalism with espionage, where she operated as a high-stakes investigator and at times a honey trap for MI6's commercial arm. Her tenure at News of the World was a whirlwind of power, intrigue, and moral complexity. Christine's intuitive investigative skills made her a standout, earning her a reputation as a formidable force in Fleet Street. Yet it was her introduction to an MI6-connected operative to the newspaper that unwittingly set the stage for the phone hacking scandal, an orchestrated psyop designed to manipulate public perception and tighten control over the press. Christine's realization of her role in the scheme, coupled with her own manipulation by unseen forces, marked a turning point in her life. After meeting with David Icke, who many of you know, sparked by reading his book, The Perception Deception, was a pivotal moment. This encounter, coupled with revelations from a woman who identified Christine as monarch puppet, led her to confront the fragmented pieces of her past. From Disney cartoon triggers to ritualistic abuse at orphanages, Christine began to unravel how her life had been orchestrated by forces beyond her control, potentially even off-planet entities. Today, however, Christine is a beacon of truth, hosting her own YouTube channel at the handle Christine_Joanna_Hart, offering a platform to explore the hidden forces shaping our world. Despite the pain of her past, Christine's faith and astral awareness have guided her to a place of healing and reintegration, where she fights to expose the non-human entities and systemic corruption she believes drives global agendas. Christine stands as a force to be reckoned with, the orphaned experiment who became the hunter of hidden truths, the mind control victim who reclaimed her sovereignty. In a world engineered to dim defiant lights, Christine blazes. Her story isn't one of escape, it's a battle cry. For in the heart of every survivor beats the thunder of revolution. We, the slaves, all rise. Christine didn't just endure the darkness, she set it on fire, proving that the human spirit, once ignited, can rewrite the code of control itself. Her legacy is a beacon for the broken, a warning to the architects of fear. The butterflies are flying free, and the storm they carry will reshape the skies. Before wrapping up the introduction of today's guest, I'd like to share just a couple quick reminders and updates. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, if you wanted to share any information privately with me, or if you were interested in submitting a written testimony to be featured in a Substack article, you can reach out to me via email at imagineabetterworld2020.com or standbysurvivors@protonmail.com. I've also recently started up my third YouTube channel, and you can subscribe to me there at the handle at Imagination Podcast Official that I'm now streaming new episode premieres from weekly. Turn on your notifications and join our loving community in the live chats every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Central Time. Thank you all on the other side of the screen wholeheartedly for helping to make the imagination the safest space on the internet for survivor, whistleblower, advocate, and educator disclosures. Your support means the absolute world to me and to every guest on this show. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest of honor, walking miracle, survivor and whistleblower, fierce mama bear, cycle breaker, astral realm slayer, survivor and anti-child abuse advocate, psychic investigator, and a beacon of hope to us all. the one, the only Christine Joanna Hart. Christine, it is so wonderful to have you on today. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thank you, Emma, so much for having me on. And what a lovely introduction. It almost hit me up. So the butterflies fly free. That was so beautiful. Thank you.
And you're an example of that. And I'm really excited to get to share your story. I have been just consuming all the content that I can about you because your story is incredible. All the different aspects of society that it connects with, your professional career, your childhood, the institutions involved with your story. It's just incredible what you've overcome, Christine. And, you know, it's really inspiring to see you here today as a public speaker, as somebody now giving a voice to children like you and victims like you who don't have somebody to speak up for them. You know, it's amazing. And I just want to start off by thanking you for all the work that you've done, writing books and doing podcasts. And, you know, rehashing this all the time has to be a really hard thing to do. And we just all are really, really appreciative that for your courage and bravery to do it.
Oh, thank you, Emma. That's really kind. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I thought maybe we would start by going back in time and talking about your childhood, because it's not the typical kind of monarch, MK Ultra, multi-generational childhood story that we hear a lot of times. I think your story is very unique, and wanted to start off at birth and talk about what happened after that, and we'll kind of lead that into your early childhood years and the family that you ended up being put into.
Yeah, well, I was dumped by my real mother, so-called real mother, Mary. She was a 13-year-old schoolgirl, and I was left at an orphanage. I was left on the steps. They tracked her down after, after she'd left me. They didn't want to keep me. She had apparently slept with a succession, even though she was just 13 and a Catholic schoolgirl, she had slept with a succession of older men and got pregnant with me, tried to hide the pregnancy. There was a priest involved right from the start. So they took me into the Roman Catholic orphanage. It was called the Crusades of Rescue back then. And I stayed there in various different orphanages connected to Crusade of Rescue, which is now the Catholic Children's Society. And I was adopted age 4 by a family that they'd already taken a boy, and they said they wanted another child. And I was just really handed over to them. And I think why I was handed over to them is because my father had a sister called Kathleen. She was Sister Kathleen Hart, and she was with the Daughters of St. Paul, which was quite a powerful order of nuns that were linked with the Pope around that time. I mean, they're still out there. They're based in Langley. They've got a convent in Boston where I went to stay for a while. So they're still out there. She's dead now. She passed on. And they were a strange family in that on his side, there was the church tied to the Catholic Church. And I think that's why they were giving me. And on her side, there was military. They were based out in India for a long time. Her father was in the army. And so it was strange because they were first cousins. He was 10 years older. They hid it from me and my brother that they were first cousins all of our lives. We only found out after he died and she died. We were always told, oh, we just have the same name. Wasn't it a coincidence we met? And, you know, it's quite an offensive lie because we would mix with their relatives all the time. So everybody knew apart from us. We're treated a little bit like cuckoos in the nest, you know, told that we were born of sin. We were born, you know, out of wedlock, and it meant we were inferior. So I grew up with that, which is quite hard. You were reminded you were adopted constantly, and you were taken back to these parties that they had at the Crusade of Rescue, which were actually at the orphanage. So we would go in, and my mother used to say, oh, we're going to take you back. And there were other kids clinging to my father's legs and, you know, trying to get him to take them home with them. And it was really quite disturbing. I really think that they should have left the children, you're adopted, that's it, leave you, rather than you come back all the time and you're reminded how grateful you have to be for having a home and food. I mean, it was really kind of abusive. And I've had it out with these people, and they took a record of my father, but they put two names. So one, it has Tom Hogan on some of the paperwork. My birth certificate's got no name. And I met Tom Hogan, and he had dark brown hair and dark eyes. And I said, I've always known that my father is a blue-eyed blonde, just instinctively. And I said, is there anybody else throughout the records? And they said, no, there's not. Turned out later, there was a whole other record, but it was in her records. So I wasn't allowed to see it until recently, a couple of years ago. And there was another man listed as my father, someone called Paddy Feeney. I tracked down his family, and I was showed photos, and there was somebody with blue eyes and blonde hair. Well, obviously went grey, and he died as an alcoholic. He died all alone, and I could have, only a few years before, and I could have basically met him and known him, which is pretty evil. Also, my adoptive home was very abusive. She would call him daddy. He obviously was a pedophile. I mean, when she was 6, he was 16, and they were interacting at that age. He was a gold-plated pedophile. He was very good looking. He didn't have any interest in women. He had interest in me and my school friends. So he took me off to Dublin, where I was abused by him. And I was taken regularly off there, was abused. He sold me to other men, took pictures of me. And that was my life until, and she was very vicious. She would beat me with a cane. It was a feather duster with black feathers, and she would use the cane and literally whip the backs of my legs. And I still to this day can feel that on the backs of my legs. Or if I'm arguing with a woman, I will feel that. And I've tried absolutely everything to release it, but it's still there. And so this was the abuse. It was pretty horrible. She would call him daddy. He would call her mummy. And then when I came to my puberty, I stayed out one night, and she was really very dominating to me. And she would pick away at my self-confidence. She was really jealous of me. It was just like living with a very intense enemy. I look back now and think she was demonically possessed, because nobody's got that much hatred for one person when they haven't done anything. And so I got to 13 and stayed out one night, tried to come back, and they said no. I think my father was afraid of social workers being around, and so they popped me back into care. So I was back in care, which was probably the best place for me. I was allowed to, be myself. But then at 18, they just drop you out of care. And I had been at grammar school. I was intelligent, but my mother had made sure that she didn't like me doing well. So I failed to please her. So I basically left school without anything. And so it was hard to get to 18. And then, the kids' home just said, well, you go and live in a hostel now. You're 18. We don't look after you. And so I just dumped in a B&B, which is depressing. And I didn't know how to look after myself, how to function in life. And so I took an overdose. And that was pretty horrible. I had a stomach pump. I ended up taking 4 in all. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I wanted to go back to the kids' home because it was my home. I wanted to be with the other kids, but the other kids were getting put in B&Bs as well. They weren't being, helped or anything. And so I took the 4th overdose and the 4th stomach pump, and kept turning up at my kids' home. And they said, you should go back to your original parents. This is what we believe. I mean, really, how about giving me accommodation at this point? But apparently it was too much. So I left the hostel and went back to my adoptive parents, which was quite difficult. By that time, I had a job. Somebody came to our kids' home. Lots of organizations came to our kids' home looking to give us work, basically. We came to that certain age. And there was a student who worked there whose father was running a private investigations company. And he put out the sort of offer, some of you can train, you can be an apprentice here if you like. So there was a few of us that went for interviews, and there was also other people because they'd advertised the job. And I got the job there was 50 other applicants, and I got the job. So when I went back home, I was, by that time, I was working for this detective agent. I just started work, this detective agency. So they said, right, you can come here, you pay your rent and give us £40 a week, and we'll let you live here and you go to work every day. And so that was it. But it was quite difficult because the work was a lot of going undercover. So you change your identity. And my parents were very, you can't wear makeup, you can't dye your hair, you can't see the people that you used to know. And so I was used to dyeing my hair. I had it punky. One point I had a skinhead. It was quite weird to be there and have, they wanted me to be a certain way, which was very like a Quaker almost, had to go to church, which I didn't mind, but had to wear, stuff up to my neck like that, and I'm very frumpy, and cut my hair and don't have highlights and no makeup. And I look back and see it was that, oh, you mustn't be a temptation to your father, which is pretty grim. So I did dress like that. I went along with the whole thing. And then I was going into work and using different identities in this job that I didn't particularly like. I was underpaid. Because I'm a victim, and why not pay me enough? So I was underpaid, and I wasn't happy at home. It was really, and I felt really suicidal again. I took a load of overdoses again, but I was really lousy at doing them. I used to take a load of paracetamols and ring a friend to say goodbye, and they'd tell somebody, and I'd go and get another pump again. And I thought, well, I told my social worker, I have to not tell anyone. And he said to me, well, I tell you what, you ring me when you feel like doing it and say goodbye, and promise me that you'll say goodbye before you do it. And he actually saved my life, because I thought, well, I've got to ring Doug it's before I do it. And you could never get hold of him. So I would have the feeling come on me, and I would think, oh, damn, I've got to speak to him. And of course, the feeling then passes. And he actually saved my life, because I went through that period then. And I don't know what it was that changed that made me want to live. Maybe it was a boyfriend I met around that time, Ray, who was very understanding and understood me. I don't know, but I did start to kind of move out of that sort of phase and stop the self-hating, even though I was still with my parents for a while. And I would move out for a little while, move into a flat, and then sort of try and move back home. So I was a little bit like a weird homing pigeon. And you do get very bonded with abusers. People don't really understand that. They like, oh, you said you're an abuser, you kept going back there. They don't understand that you have this relationship with your abusers that's strange. And I think I acted that out. I found, before I went into care, I'd found a book on Ian Brady, the Moors murderer, called Beyond Belief, and I'd read it and found it really interesting, in that they said in the book that Brady could appear and disappear and talk to ghosts and that kind of thing. And I'd always been a little bit psychic, and I thought, well, that's interesting. He's an adoptee. He's done these things. Maybe his adoptive parents weren't very nice to him. How about that? And I thought, if I can meet him, then I can somehow tell the world that adoptive parents secretly abuse their adopted children. And he's a serial killer now because of this. So I wrote to Brady, and it took a long time to get a reply from this serial killer. He didn't really interact with people. He knew he was famous. He's kind of, swollen ego around that. And I went up to where he lived, and I took some photos and I sent one or two, and I said, you can have a whole lot if you reply, because I was sick of not getting replies. And he sent a letter back. I started writing to him, and then he very quickly said, come and see me. So my boyfriend at the time wasn't happy about that, but I went up to see him. Sitting with him, I thought, well, you're not really as interesting as I thought. I didn't particularly like it. I thought, no, I'm not going to, go down this road. And it was strange. It was quite overwhelming because he was like a mental patient in a mental hospital. And I felt almost as if he was handing me his burden, like, oh, you've interacted with me. Thanks, I'll have you. And here's my burden. And I thought, no, I don't really want this. And I sort of wanted to reverse the car. I'd left the detective agency where I was working, and I wasn't, no, I'd hopped to another detective agency called Worldwide, and I was working there. I was going out with this boyfriend, and it appeared in the Sunday paper, Ian Brady has seen this blonde, this mystery young blonde. And I showed it to Ray, and he said, oh, that's you idiot. And I rang a private investigator that I knew. And he said, oh, you should come and meet me and talk to me about it. So I went to meet him, and he'd set me up. He'd actually sold me to the press for $5,000 and, or 10 grand. I don't know how much it was a lot of money he'd sold me for. And there I was, and the press got hold of me. They took me up to Swiss Cottage, and they said, he said that you were writing to this serial killer because you believed he was your father. Now, I'd said this one time to Alan, the man, that PI that had kind of, dished me up to the press. But it was my little explanation as to why I was writing to a serial killer. I didn't really know why I was doing it. I wasn't aware of the victim abuser relationship and how you try and reenact it with somebody else. So he was a stand-in for my father. I couldn't communicate with my father. Every time I looked at him, he would look at me as if I was, he was looking through a dirty book. So there was it was too traumatic for me. So I was trying to work out that abuser, victim abuser with Ian Brady, somebody like my father, somebody very good looking who you think, well, come on, you can get women. Why are you going after children? And I wanted to understand that. And my father was very good looking and would get beautiful women looking at him, but he was totally oblivious to them. But he would look at my school friends and me. He would constantly focus on me like I was a model, naked, even though I wasn't. Well, not when he was abusing me, but he would lust after me constantly. And it made me really repress my sexuality, like really squash it down, and my femininity. Even when I went back there and they made me really plane myself up, he still managed to lust after me. It was like really strange. It's like, why? And so I think I was trying to find that out from Brady. But I'd said to Alan one night, maybe he's my long lost father, because my mother came from Manchester. And it was just a kind of a passing thing. And he told the press this, and the press said, oh, we really like it, the idea that you thought he was your father, and that's why you were going to see him. And they said, we'll fly you back up there. You've got to say to him, hey, are you my dad? And I thought, hang on, this is crap, because I found him in a book. And I was trying to tell them this, and they didn't want that story. They said to me, oh, wow, you really look like Myra Hindley, his girlfriend. At the time, they did murders together. They said, oh, you really look like her. He must have noticed. You know what? We'll have a headline, The New Myra Hindley. So you can either be his daughter, or you can be the new Myra Hindley, his new girlfriend. Which would you like? So I said the daughter thing, and it was really awful. They left me in the hotel room. I sat up all night, and people say, why didn't you walk away at that point? Tell them to get lost. Well, I was 23 years of age. I was working class. They were middle class. They were the media. I mean, they had this aura of power. I just thought, well, I just felt in a trap. I didn't know I could walk away.
Totally.
Sorry?
I said, oh, totally. Absolutely.
Yeah, I
You wouldn't
mean,
feel that way
now,
at 23, probably just starstruck and like wanted to do anything that they wanted, you know?
yeah, I mean, I knew I didn't want to be the new Myra Hindley. I thought, no, God, no. And it's so
Mhm.
unfair to do that. And now when I've got, these people are complaining about how the press are really bad to them. Well, how about what I went through? And nobody has come and offered me compensation. As the story went on, it's even worse. They flew me up to see Brady. I did not want to see this man again. I thought, it's not like a storybook, it's a real serial killer. And it wasn't that I was afraid of him, it was that he was so sort of like a victim. And it was almost like I was kind of getting into something that I didn't want to be into. And there I was meeting him again. So I went in there again, and there he was standing there with fish fingers and chips and peas. He'd just got his dinner. I was late going in. I had an hour the first time, so I only had 10 minutes the second time, which I thought good, because I don't want to sit there again for another hour. And I said to him, the press have run this story about me and I want to keep it. But he said, can I keep this? And I was like, and he said, keep it. And I'm okay, you can keep it. So he kept it, and he said, you should just avoid the press. And I thought, well, they're waiting in the car for me outside and they've flown me here. But I didn't say that. I went outside and I said, look, he said he doesn't remember someone called Mary, he was in Borstal around that time. And I thought they would say, okay, you just go home and we'll drop you off. And instead, they took me to a nearby hotel and they showed me the TV. It came on, and there was my face advertising it on the television. I couldn't believe it. And they dressed me up around this point. They put red lipstick on me. They bouffed my hair, put me in gold lame, took these shots of me, which I still have. And so there I was advertising the paper on Sunday. I was really upset. I didn't know who to ring. I rang Alan, the person that had sold me. I didn't know he had at that point. And he said, tell them to take you out of the country. And so I said to Phil Hall, the journalist in charge, take me out of the country. I was just really repeating. I was so zoned out. And he said, okay. And so the two journalists took me off to the south of France. And that's where Phil Hall became my lover, in the south of France. And when I tell boyfriends that I've had since over this story, they're like, oh, that's great. He got a story that wasn't true. He got his byline on a front page and he got his leg over. Well done, Christine. But I was sort of, my head was spinning. I was out in the south of France. He was like, oh, you're a superstar and, you're so beautiful. And I'm going to make you Marilyn Monroe, a star. And, they were impressive people, these journalists. I mean, I was, a little kind of quite sheltered working class girl in a way. I'd only known working class men. And they took me to this beautiful hotel by the river. So I was quite blown away. And the journalist, Phil Hall, kept saying he was in love with me. I've fallen in love with you. I don't know what's happened. We're going to have this life together. You want to be a writer. We're going to be a power couple. And my head was gone. Of course, I slept with him. I mean, I just believed that my life had changed and I was just about to go and marry him. And we were there for about 2 weeks while I was back home in England, front page, middle page, TV again, front page, middle page, TV again. And something that would be worth 200 grand, 100 grand 1 week, 100 grand the next. They paid me absolutely nothing. They had already paid this guy who had sold me like I'm just like a hooker. And literally, I suppose people can say, well, you're behaving with one, but this guy was telling me he loved me. And I thought we were going to be living together and we were coming home on the ferry. And he said, as soon as we got to UK, I started to get a really bad feeling. And he said to me, where am I going to drop you? Because your parents have contacted us. You can't go back there ever. They've seen you on the front page. He wrote that I had claimed that Brady was my daughter. And he said to me, I've been really clever because I know you're not his daughter. I've written that you've claimed it. That way it never comes back on me when people realize it's not true. But how about you think about what you're doing to a young girl's life? I mean, I became a journalist later. I would never in a million years do that to another human being. To make out that I had gone forward and said, you know, he was my father. As if you do that, you'd hurt the parents of the victims that he killed. So it was absolutely horrific, and it was to rebound on my life as well. And so he said, oh, what are we going to do with you? And I thought, well, hang on, what do you mean, what are we going to do with you? You're in love with me, aren't you? We're going to have a life together. I'm going back to your house. And he said, oh, I'll drop you somewhere, but I'm only going to pay for 2 nights for you. And meanwhile, I had lost my job. I dotted around to different agencies. It was a new one. I lost my job because they'd written about the agency and the story. They were angry, told me, don't come back. And he dropped me in this B&B, and it was filthy, in Earl's Court. Now, this is Mirror Group newspapers. Dropped me in this place, paid for 3 nights. 3 nights. And it was a little single room, and they just dropped me there. Now, he would come every day to sleep with me. I was still thinking, this is my boyfriend, soon I'm going to go and live with him. It's just, you know, there's a hold up or something. And so he would take me out places, bring me back, have sex with me. And one time he got up and he was looking down at me. He said, isn't it amazing? You had a life before I came along. You had a job. You had somewhere to live. We really do ruin lives, don't we? It's so interesting. Here you are. You're utterly destroyed. And I thought, you know... And then he left, and then the owner of the B&B, the shabby B&B, came in, and he said, you're only paid up for 1 more night. And he said, but don't worry, I've got some men. You can see men, and that will pay your rent. I'll send men in. Phil Hall had dropped me in a brothel. He dropped me in a brothel for shame. And now I think I'm deserved a little bit of compensation for that, with all these people that are coming forward for compensation from the press, from Mirror Group, from Phil Hall, for doing that to me. I thought, shall I kill myself? That was my first thought. I'm going to kill myself. And I thought, right, I'll get the paracetamol. But I was so useless at taking paracetamol. I could literally take quite a lot and still not die the next day. And I don't know what made me think of it, but I rang an ex-boyfriend. My current boyfriend, Ray, wasn't speaking to me. And for some reason, I rang an ex-boyfriend called Barney. I don't know why. Probably because I thought, well, he'll understand. And he said to me, I've just had a divorce and there's a house. I'm selling it and you can stay there. It's like empty. There's a mattress in there. There's no furniture, but you can sleep in the mattress, Chris, and I'll bring blankets. And thankfully, I think, sorry, it's quite
It's okay. Take your time. Take a breath. It's okay.
I just always think that he saved my life. And I don't see him anymore, but I do think he saved my life. Because I think I would have probably hung myself in that room. And that's what the press do to people. And people are like, oh, you're the bad person who worked for the press, and we want compensation. We were mentioned in the press. Oh, it said I was pregnant in the press. Oh, it ruined my life. I didn't get any goddamn parts on Hollywood anymore. What about what I went through? And I would have hung myself if it hadn't been for Barney. I went to his place in Greenford. I was there, and Phil would come round and sleep with me. And this went on. I didn't really know what to do. And I had about £500 in the bank. And for some reason, I thought I will go somewhere where nobody knows me. I'll go and live in America, which is quite weird because I never thought of going to America or, you know, but for some reason, there it was in my head. I know I'll go and live in New York. And I literally got on a plane, got there, landed, said to the taxi driver, take me to the central bit. I want to see the center of New York where, you know, it's all exciting. And he dropped me off in Times Square, of all places. And I sort of, as they say in that movie Angel Heart, I wandered off into the crowds. I booked in a hotel and I literally only had money for like a couple of nights. I mean, it's New York, for God's sake. I bought my one-way ticket. I literally, you know, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. And I was walking down the street, and I saw this group, a group of black men, black Muslims, and they were talking about how the white man is evil. And they were Southern American. They were talking about the blue-eyed devil. And I stood there, and it really resonated. And I thought, yes, you're right. It is the blue-eyed devil. And I thought, hang on, this is a story. And I rang the news desk of the People, and I spoke to Phil Hall, who knew I'd gone off to New York. And I said, I've got a story. Can I file copy? And I knew how to read the story, write the story, read it down the phone, and they put it into print. So I did that. And he said, well, you've earned yourself money. You know, it got in the paper. And I thought, wow, I'm being a journalist in New York. And I still thought, well, the money isn't going to come through for a little while. And it wasn't that much anyway. And I was walking down the street, and there was an Italian guy was following me, only quite young, older than me. Of course, I was only in my 20s. And he said, oh, you're not from round here, are you? And I said, no, I'm from London. I've just come over. I'm going to move here. And he said, well, where are you staying? And I said, well, I'm in a hotel, but I need to find somewhere to live. I need a job. I'm going to stay here and live here. And he said, well, that's strange, because I have a cousin, and my cousin needs a roommate, and she lives out in Brooklyn. And I'm like, oh, great. Okay, that would be great. I said, but I haven't really got any money until I get a job. And he said, well, that doesn't matter. He said, what hotel are you at? I'll pick you up tomorrow at midday, and I'll take you there. And she'll understand. She'll help you until you get a job. And so I was very much working on my own instinct at that time. I mean, now when I think of it, I mean, I'd never do something like that. But I packed my case, and he came. He threw my case into the back of the car. He took me off to Brooklyn. We went and had coffee in this beautiful, lovely Italian cafe. He said, wait an hour. I mean, I could have been trafficked or anything. God was looking out for me. And he said, you have to wait an hour for my cousin to come home. I started to get nervous and think, there's no cousin, is there? And I thought, he's got my suitcase in the back of his car. How do I get away from this? He's going to traffic me somewhere. I'm going to be in a room. Men are going to come in. That seemed to be a constant theme, the threat of that in my life. And an hour passed. He put down his coffee cup, and he said, let's go. Took me to this woman's house, and I ended up living there for about a year. I ended up on Staten Island, which I kind of went downhill there, run out of money. I was actually doing a lot with stories, selling stories. Ian Brady tracked me down via the People. Phil Hall said, oh, give him your address in America. So he was writing to me. I was getting stories that way. And I was just doing journalism. But I ran out of money. I was literally surviving on a loaf of bread and salad cream. And I'd buy a loaf of bread and put it in a cupboard and had salad cream on it. And I'd have one slice per day. And that was how I was managing. I ended up not being able to pay my rent. So I knew I was going to get thrown out of there. And I ended up homeless in New York. And I phoned the other journalists involved in the story. And I said, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to go somewhere and kill myself. And he said, no, I'll get you a flight home. You can stay at my flat in London. So I went back and stayed with him for a few weeks. And he said, my girlfriend doesn't like this. I'm going to bring you up to the pub. So he brought me up to a pub called the Stab in the Back. Phil Hall was there as well. And there was another journalist called Mydrum Jones. And he kind of just left me with my suitcase with Mydrum Jones. And Mydrum said, they've been writing stories about you. And I said, yeah, I know. I said, but they haven't been paying me. And he was quite disgusted with how they treated me. And he said, look, you can come back and sleep on my settee. I won't touch you. So I ended up staying with Mydrum. And I ended up working for the newspapers. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. PI work wasn't something I wanted to do either, but it was a case of that was the only place that knew the Brady story wasn't true. And they would take the piss out of it and say, how's your dad today? And it felt like a family. it felt like here were these mad people that had kind of, it was like I'd been in prison and there was a gang that had beaten me up and traumatized me. And they were then saying, you can join our gang though. And I thought, well, if I join their gang, I'll never be beaten up again. And so that was the position I was in. So I joined Fleet Street, and I kind of rose higher in there. I noticed that I had this really strong.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you be able to for American viewers, could you just explain what Fleet Street is so people understand how, you know, prestigious this is?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Fleet Street. Well, the story that I had been in the newspapers, that was the Sunday People, which is our national newspaper, a little bit maybe like the New York Times, that kind of thing. And then Fleet Street is what we call where all the newspapers are. So we would have like the New York Post, the New York Times, they'd all be in one place, but they ended up being in different places after a while. But at a certain point, they were all on one street in London. It was called Fleet Street. Like Savile Row is where you have tailors. Yeah. So there I was working on Fleet Street. I started off with the Sunday Mirror where Phil was. Phil then jumped to the News of the World. So I followed Phil to the News of the World. He began at that point to just plain ignore me. But I had a job there. And they started to give me things like, and it's quite annoying because there's someone else called Graham Johnson who is busy narrating my life at the moment over this big trial that's going on. And he makes out that I never left my flat when I was working. And literally, I have PTSD because I was going undercover with gun runners, cozying up to them. I was a stripper in a bar for a while because they were spying on somebody. It was constantly boots on the ground. It was constant. I was never at home. I was always out doing this, doing that. And they put me in a great deal of danger. There was a story one time that Phil gave me where a cab driver was raping women, and he'd been in prison for rape. He'd come out and he was a cab driver. And because I was blonde and in my 20s, I was fitted the profile of the victim. And they said, get in the car with him, get him to take you back to his place, and we'll take pictures, you know, it'd be good as pictures of you getting in the car. Yeah. And all I had was a reporter called Neville Fellback following me. Now, I'm not being funny, but Neville Fellback isn't a great driver. So this was the jobs that I was given, and I still have PTSD because of the News of the World to this day, because the amount of undercover work that I have done. And even bizarrely, I built myself up. I was sent over to Northern Ireland to find out what paramilitaries were doing. I remember they came back and I went, we had to go undercover with the Real IRA in a meeting, and this person that's narrating about me, like, oh, I sat at home laying on the settee all the time. I actually brought him along. I brought him in on the job. He was with another paper, and he brought a bodyguard with him, and he wouldn't go up to the attic room where they said, okay, you know, we found out you're a journalist, come up to this attic room in this pub in Kilburn. I thought, okay, I'm going to go up there. I don't think they're going to kill me. It's the middle of London. He wouldn't go. So it's annoying when someone else narrates your story. When I was just boots on the ground constantly, it's because I'm a woman. You know, women aren't allowed to be kick-ass journalists. They've got, no, you were at home. The boys were out there. The boys weren't out there, actually. And if they did go out there, they had their bodyguards and they were like in the car rather than pushing themselves forward. So this is what I've had to tolerate recently. So I noticed when I was working on Fleet Street, I had a really strong sixth sense that was growing. I'd always been a bit psychic when I was younger, but it got stronger and stronger. And I started to get known for it. Like they would give me a story and they wouldn't know how to get into the story. And I would look at it and I would think, right, how do you do that? You would need to speak to this person. You would need to say this to this person. That would give you a little bit of the jigsaw. Then you'd need to go there. Maybe you'd need to go undercover. You'd get this jigsaw. You'd join it up together. And I would never know from my kind of normal front altar, as they call it, how to do it. So I'd get an editor would ring me, say from, you know, one of the Sunday Times or something, and they would ask me something really difficult and obscure. And I would think, you know, the front part of me, how do I do that? You know, and I'd feel angry because not only had I got the dangerous things to do, but now I was getting the absolutely impossible things to do. And I remember thinking, how come I don't get an easy job ever? How come graduates who go to university, they get the easy jobs? Why am I getting, oh, it's impossible? So I'd either be doing dangerous work, or I'd be sitting there with no work, or I'd do something which was impossible. And I used to be very angry when I would get these jobs in that were absolutely impossible. But I noticed that when I went to sleep and woke up the next day, I would know how to do it. And I remember at the time speaking to what I thought were spirit guides. And I remember saying, I've got this really impossible job. And I would look up at the sky for some reason. I mean, you don't have to with spirit guides, they're all around you. But I remember in my flat looking up and saying, I really want to be a hit on Fleet Street, but I can't do it on my, I'm useless, you know, and saying, please tell me how to do it. And then I would sleep and wake up and I would know. And as soon as I woke, I would go, bang, I know how to do it. And I would grab my pen and write it all down before I lost it. And then I would do it. And these editors used to say to me, that's amazing. That is genius. You're a genius. And I started to get a reputation for that. And it grew and it spread everywhere. I ended up working for the Daily Mail, the Observer, other newspapers would call me. And at this point, I got for some reason, I started to get very interested in the Real IRA and one person specifically. And I literally had photos of this guy on a corkboard. And I really just wanted to get close to him. And it was a really weird feeling. It felt like it wasn't organic. It felt like it was coming from somewhere else. And I remember at that time, I didn't have my sexuality. Like I would hang out with other girls on Fleet Street, Fiona Whitty, etc., Tracy Chevron. And I didn't, they were all getting married, dating, and they were introducing me to men, but I was like cold. And I thought, well, this is my sexual abuse. I'm frigid. So, you know, and I just kept out of it. But I did feel strange because I didn't have my sexuality. And I assumed it was because I repressed it so much around my father. Someone's lusting after you the whole time. And there's a woman there that's really jealous of that, intensely pulsating with it. Of course, you're going to press it down. So I did. And so I just assumed, well, I've repressed it so far, it's not going to bounce up. So I started having therapy at the Priory. This is an annoying thing that recently I've been accused of spying, of only going there for celebrities because I was spying on them. Absolutely not true. I was there 100% for myself because I didn't have a sexuality. And I knew I wouldn't move forward in life if I didn't have this. And it was strange that suddenly there I was at this Real IRA meeting. There was one of these commanders there. I won't say his name. I could do, but I'm not going to. And I felt this feeling, and it was like a push from behind. And there was my sexuality, but it was kind of not really my sexuality. It's really hard to describe it, really. I started to pin these pictures of him up on the corkboard and know that I had to penetrate him, that I felt like a heat-seeking missile. Now, he was based down in South Armagh, which is a no-go area. And the police, the army, nobody can go there. There was a soldier called Robert Nayrac who went there one time, and they cut him up and fed him to Slab Murphy's pigs. I mean, it's somewhere strangers don't go, certainly not with an English accent. But if you went, Emma, you'd also be pulled in and they'd interrogate you. What are you doing here? It's our area. It's their area. It's deep in countryside, bandit country, they call it. And I was going every weekend and I didn't know why I was going there. I was literally, the News of the World were paying. I was using their travel desk to go. And so it was free. You know, they were paying for the hotel. I said, oh, I'm researching stories. And I would walk around the area and then I would come back. And then I started just going down there and saying, oh, I'm writing a book, yada, yada. And one time this guy pulled me in. So I got pulled in, I got questioned. I got a sack put over my head and taken somewhere. And they said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm a journalist. And they said, really, you're that interested in us. I was lucky I didn't get killed. I ended up writing loads of stories about them. I mean, I have my name on all these stories about them. And I ended up moving to Belfast, and I ended up having a relationship with this man. Now, this is a senior commander in the Real IRA. He's famous. He's a known name. He's been in the news. I mean, he's a known commander. And one of my stories, We Get Inside. I did a story for the News of the World, and they called it We Get Inside the Real IRA. And they were never putting my byline on things. And I said, listen to the editor, I said, if you don't put my byline on that, these guys won't give me any more stories because they'll think I'm spying on them or something. So I got my byline on it finally, and which I can show you the kind of the story. It's a good one. It was front page and middle page. And there I was to get these stories. I was headhunted then by the Sunday Times, and they said, your Real IRA stories are bang on. Well, of course they were bang on. I was sleeping with the head of the Real IRA. And I noticed that when I was in his house at nighttime, I would suddenly be in a strange state of mind. I would get, as I called it, really paranoid. And I would wake up in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m. And I would think, what the hell am I doing? And I would look at him and I would think, this is a Real IRA commander. What are you doing? There's good journalism and there's absolutely crazy. I mean, these guys, when they torture people, and they're paranoid as well, they literally make you sit on a cooker. They even do it to their own people, and they just cut you up in pieces. They don't muck around. They're serious. They're not, because they're very scared of being arrested, etc. And I looked at him and I thought, this is a Real IRA commander. I'm in his house. It's right in the middle of the countryside. What am I doing? What kind of madness is this? What kind of madness am I suffering from? And this went on, and I would flip into a different state of mind, and I would go back there, and then I would flip back into the other state of mind. And it was scary because I thought, what's going on? And I was at the Priory at that time examining my sexual abuse. And he said, well, you're just a good journalist. And, you probably get scared because it's scary what you're doing, But I sensed something else and I couldn't work out what it was. And then he said to me one time, I'd got a front page on the UDA, and I went down to meet him at South Almar just to show off. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and he looked at the paper, and I had my byline. I was getting my byline finally. And he said, very good, very good. And he said, are you pleased with it? And I said, kind of, but I've got a second place byline. It should have been first. And he said to me, you do know you're two separate people, don't you? You're two separate individuals. One side is exciting and, I enjoy, and the other side is moody, depressed, and scared of life. And I thought, well, actually, he's talking about me because, I was there and I felt in that persona because I didn't want to go anywhere with him. I just thought, I'm getting straight back in my car and going. Start to get paranoid of him. And as I call it, well, actually, it was good to be scared of someone like that. They're very paranoid people, and rightly so, So I came back, had my son, had a relationship with somebody out there, had my son, and I was back then in London, and I wrote a book. I visited another serial killer, Kenneth Bianchi, the Hillside Strangler, wrote a book called In for the Kill. And then somebody, a friend of Fritz Springmeier, online contacted me and said, oh, you're a monarch, you're at MK Ultra. And I thought, well, this is, crap and rubbish. And then she put me in a group. And I started talking to the other girls. I started to see one of them was talking to Miles Johnson of Bases. And of course, you had talking to Bases, James Casbolt and Max Spears. And so I was listening to this thinking, you know, what is this rubbish? And of course I thought it was woo-woo and crazy. And this woman was telling me, oh, you're like one of them. And I thought, no, I couldn't possibly be. And there was one girl in the group called Louise Clark, and she was very clever. She had great insight into the whole thing. It's very complex. And she said to me, your side that was exciting, etc., you're saying it's gone. And literally this side of me that was operational on Fleet Street, that was finding out these things, solving these stories down in South Armagh, it left me. It left me when Fleet Street did. So I didn't have my sexuality, because I used that a lot to get information, etc. It had gone. And I called her Joanna for clarity. And I said to Louise, I said, that side of me, it's gone. And again, I thought it was to do with sexual abuse and that kind of thing. And she said to write down, to get different pads and write down the different personas. And so I started to do it. And that strong persona, I felt it come out, and I wrote down Project Aquino. So I tried to contact this Aquino guy that they had also been speaking about, Michael Aquino. And I sent him an email and I said, look, were you over in London, and were you involved with the Crusade of Rescue? And were you experimenting on kids in Catholic children's home with this Monarch MK Ultra stuff? Because I've heard that you were in London, you know, at that point. And Fritz Springmeier was telling me that they use children in Catholic orphanages. So I sent him an email and he ignored me. And next thing, I found myself being pulled out of my body by my feet and taken to a room, an astral, on the astral, but I was fully conscious. And though I do that sometimes, I've never been forcibly taken somewhere. And he took me in a room and he tasered me, kept tasering me again and again. Who are you? What do you want with me? I came back to my body and I went on Facebook. There was a guy in there called Christian, and I went, oh my God, you never guess what happened. And he said to me, I think you've got the first part of your interview. And I sent him another email and I told him what had gone on. I said, you yanked me out of my body and you took me somewhere. And he sent back a link to a song, Jefferson Airplane, I think, White Rabbit song, and with Grace Slick. And he said, I'm going to have to get Grace to alter the lyrics to include our little adventure last night. And I thought, oh my God. And I was really worried about, you know, him coming. He came at me for about 4 nights. And I started to become part of the Truther community, met up with Miles Johnson, and met a guy called Douglas Dietrichs, who explained to me about Monarch and what it is and how it's off planet and how you're controlled by off planet, and how my visiting these serial killers wasn't organic. It was about finding out why they'd committed their crimes. And it was weird because it was the same feelings I had around the IRA commander, like a kind of compulsion, and a compulsion to touch them. And I developed a skill that when you touch like there, you can read the blood in somebody. And I literally went to these serial killers and I would touch them like that and try and download that information. And the same way with the Real IRA commander, you can also touch them there. There's a big vein that goes down there. And when I got pushed out of Fleet Street because of this phone hacking thing, that I mistakenly brought in this guy called John Boyle, who brought in phone hacking. So there they dropped every investigator. So there I was left, you know, without this part of me, without anything. So I started to do psychic readings for people, and that started to blossom out. And one day I was reading somebody and I started getting sucked underwater, and I was sucked into this portal, and I journeyed down in this portal like a rabbit hole, really, dropped down into it. And underneath there's this whole world with stargates in. If you go through the stargates, you can, if you take people with you, which I started off doing that, you can access their past lives. But interestingly, it's controlled by Nazis. Now, the only person I could talk to about this was Douglas Dietrichs. He seemed to know all about it. And he said, oh, yeah, the Nazis have formed an advanced civilization In the Unterland, it's actually underground. And normally, if somebody had told me that, I would say, keep taking the tablets. But actually, I'd astral traveled there, and it was absolutely true. And then I was interacting with Sarah Adams, also one of these super soldiers, and she said, "Oh, come realm walking with me." So we went into a forest, walked into a forest, came to a portal, and then we went up a portal, and then we journeyed to Mars, Jupiter, all these different planets. Like it's a kind of a jump room, this kind of portal in the forest that you kind of walk in. It's almost like hypnosis. And I started bringing other people there, and you can really find out a lot about their lives if you bring them there. I started doing that, but I stopped doing that because it took a lot of energy out of me. I literally had to activate their chakras and then activate their Merkaba and then bring them with me, and I'd be sick for a week afterwards. So it wasn't really worth my while. But I found myself, so I retrained as a psychotherapist, and I still haven't got access to that part of me that was hijacked. I mean, people say about parts, people say about monarch. I mean, I do think that I shouldn't know how to access the upper world, how to access the lower world, but these people that they call super soldiers, if I am one of them, I can certainly do that. And I have this precognition that I've got, and I think, you know, possibly we shouldn't be doing it. And a friend said to me, "Oh, you can only do that because you've had trauma as a child." But I said, no, I think I've been in these projects, and of course there's no way of proving it. But now I'm mixed up with this trial with Prince Harry, Prince William royals, saying I spied on them. And I'm trying to tell my story of, I wasn't actually spying. I've got this gift that allowed me to access your worlds, to walk in this area of kings and royalty. That's coming out in January 2026. I was just asked to go on Channel 4 to talk about it in dispatches. They're doing dispatches about it. But they didn't want to hear this. They didn't want to hear woo-woo, as they put it. So I'm in this position of not being able to tell my story, of being accused of doing illegal spying, which I never did. I had an amazing ability, but it was through the projects that I had the ability. Now, they do call, Russ Disdale was calling super soldiers satanic super soldiers. And I do actually believe that the abilities we're given, that they attach some kind of demonic entity to the part, and it gives us that superpower, and it does leak over. Obviously, like I can do it. I'm the sort of moody, depressed style. I mean, talking to me now, I've not done anything on Fleet Street because it was another part of me that I haven't got. So I do still have that ability, but that other part of me has it stronger, has it far, far stronger. And you're left in a position of not really knowing where to turn. There's the truthers, there's a disclosure circuit, but I think it's the blind leading the blind. I don't think everybody knows really what's going on. You have the pressure of other people who don't believe in it and think, you've lost your marbles. And there are people, I would say Douglas Dietrich knows a lot about it, but he's not speaking about it much. So it's not a very nice position to be in. It makes you not really want to talk about it.
Oh, yeah. I don't blame you for that, and especially seeing how much you did. Like, you were so young whenever you first had a fascination with investigations, with journalism, with your PI work. Like, that seems like it was something that you had from a very, very young age, before you were ever even of age to be a professional. And then you get into that world, you're sacrificing so much of yourself for it, to the point where you're literally risking your life at work to get a story. And then they treat you like crap, even though you poured your entire adult world into this, and a childhood passion, that had to have just been so disheartening. Sort of like finding Santa Claus isn't real, like you have this idea of what this world's going to be like, and then you're just completely used and abused in that world, and then as soon as you get out, they use and abuse you even more, you know, after all the work that you did, all the stories that you got them, all the things that you risked. I can't even imagine how disheartening that was.
It is, yeah. And there's one guy doing it, Graham Johnson, and he's doing it, and he literally was competing with me. So there I was on the News of the World. He was there too. And when I came in, it was like a parting of the waves, because I had this skill. I had a skill that I shouldn't have had. So I wasn't like a normal woman. But he's got that competing thing with me. Oh, I was a big investigator. I was a James Bond there. So you were just a little person. You stayed at home all the time. So he's narrating my story out there, but he's not narrating it true because he's competing with me. And then there's another guy, Nick Davies. Again, there's that competing. I'm the James Bond. I'm the investigative journalist here. You silly bitch, you were at home. And it's not true. It's a lie. And I think, how can I stop them from lying about that? I mean, I've got my cuttings. I can wave them in the face. I know at the trial it's going to be brought up. I mean, you know, and I've been diminished, devalued. It's misogyny as well. If I was a man, they wouldn't do it. It's utter, unadulterated misogyny. And when I try and tell my story of having this part, oh God, that is literally, they've been putting it out there that I've lost my mind. The strain of losing my career has made me lose my mind. Oh, and now she's talking about mind control. This is what they're putting out there. Really? I mean, is that the best they can do?
On what grounds did they have as evidence that you were spying and collecting information in a way other than how you said you were through your spiritual gifts? What were they saying that you were doing? You were phone tapping them or going to their homes? Really?
Oh, in the disposition that the mail gave me, I'm accused of phone hacking. Well, I never knew how to do that. Computer hacking. I can barely turn on a laptop. And breaking and entering and burglarizing. James Hewitt, who had an affair with Princess Diana, believes that I opened the window in his Kensington flat on the ground floor and crawled into his bedroom, and took a manuscript that he'd been writing about Diana. Yeah, this is how bad it gets. This is how bad it gets.
Oh my gosh. In a way, though, I feel like that's so validating to your gifts. They're not denying it. They're accusing you of spying because what you said was actually true. So the things that the information that you were getting whenever you were sleeping was fact. They're not accusing you of defamation or of being false. They're saying you're right, but you are spying on me, which is just horrific that they were. But how amazing at the same time that everything that you said, none of that's being discredited. You had all the right information.
Yeah, I mean, it's been in the papers. And Elton John, the singer, and I'm sure you know him out in America because he's worldwide. It's quite funny because he said, oh, she knew everything about me. And one time when I slipped over in a plane, she even heard about it minutes after it happened. And I thought, do you think I was on the plane, like peeking over the edge? I mean, it's not even true, you know? I mean, get a grip, Elton, you know, but he's going to fight this in court. He's not fighting me. He's fighting the newspaper. Oh, you hired her, and she reported that they must have written about about this slip. And apparently he thinks that I did that, and I spied on him to find out about that slip. And then Prince Harry is saying that I spied on him in Chelsea. No, I didn't. Then Prince William, now, it was written about last week in the Telegraph, he's saying that I spied on his birthday party, his 21st birthday party, and I found out about it was out of Africa, and I found out all the details and all the guests and stuff like that. And I've had journalists ring me and say, how did you find out about that? Actually, I can't remember. I can't remember how I did it. But I certainly haven't got that ability now to do that because I haven't got that part. So it's like, literally I could end up in prison because I've been accused of illegality. You do get put in prison for anything these days in the UK. So this is what I'm looking at. So it's quite scary. It's coming up in January. So yeah, and I can't tell my truth about it because, well, they don't want to hear that. I mean, they'll just say, oh my God, look, she's lost it now. In fact, this guy Johnson, he said that she's on podcast. She's saying she's MK Ultra, mind control. Oh my God, she's just completely lost the plot now. And nobody should listen to her denials of anything, because the strain of it all has meant she's lost her marbles. Well, I haven't lost my marbles. I'm here. And I'm willing to stand up in court and defend myself. I want to stand up in court. And Johnson said, oh, the Daily Mail would never allow her to be questioned. But obviously the claimants are going to want to hear my testimony. And I want to give my testimony. I don't care if they think it's woo-woo. I mean, just eat it, you know?
And this is why it's such a shame that for so many generations this has been covered up, because hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of survivors have said the same thing, that they have these gifts that they were probably born with. I think we all have some spiritual gifts, but that were exploited through these programs, that you were conditioned and developed to enhance these skills more than, you know, somebody who's not in them. And that's like 100% of survivors who have gone through this testify that yes, I was used for these gifts that I had. I was tortured to enhance them. And the government made me use them and exploited these gifts for what they wanted me to do with it. Where,
well, exactly.
You know, it's just really sad that that information's not out, because if it was, if this was common knowledge to the world, you wouldn't have to fight for your truth. You know, you wouldn't fight for the truth. People would understand that this literally has been, it's still happening today to kids, you know?
And the whole thing with South Almar and the relationship with the IRA commander, I could be dead. And I spent years and years doing that. It wasn't just like 5 minutes. It was years and years of my life. And now here I am in poverty. What about being paid for all that time? You know, if I was used, and I believe I was, what about payment? What about compensation? And it's so annoying to be part of these celebrities and royalties wanting compensation of the Daily Mail for, oh, I was mentioned in an article about a party. Oh, I sipped wine and they wrote about it. Oh no, give me £1 million. It's like, how about my life and what I went through? And some of it is the press. I was destroyed by the press. It made me literally have to go and work there. So it's like, you know, what about my compensation? But no, I mean, I'm not rich. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not royal. Therefore, I'm not human, and therefore I don't matter. And this is a reality in our world, actually.
And you're exposing secrets that likely a lot of the people sitting at the top of these institutions and royalty chains and bloodlines have perpetuated themselves and likely are participating in. You know, so they of course don't want you talking about any of this. It's easier to just call you crazy than to literally do an investigation into what you're saying you went through. Go back to World War II, look at, you know, all the different history that we have, literally proving that these projects not only existed, but existed prior to being in America. They existed in the Holocaust and before that, you know, and it's horrible that they've chosen to gaslight you instead of support you. You know, they should be coming around you and helping you get through this for everything that you did for them.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. And if you ask me, someone should buy me a flat or put me in a flat or make sure I'm okay, because I'm not okay at the moment. I've been threatened as well. I've had to have protection put on my door. But how about put me somewhere? How about that? I'm a witness in a trial. How about put me somewhere? The police would. But they're not doing that. And yeah, the things, I mean, I had a weird experience. I was listening to Max Spears talking one time. I felt pressure like there on my third eye. And you mentioned World War II. And I found myself back like in a vision. Obviously, I wasn't there. I was in a boxing ring and I stood up and I had a fall. And I said to the person beside me, I was a man, I was in a man's body. Where am I? And he said, you must have had a bad fall. You know, straighten yourself up, you'll get into trouble. And he put a dinner in front of me and I spat it out. And I said, that's not me. It's awful. And I looked up and we were on a long table. And I said, where are we? What year is it? And he said, some date in the 40s. And I said, where am I? And he said, Treblinka. And that was the first. And I said, what's my name? And he said, you've really had a bad fall in the ring, because I was boxing. And I said, what's my name? And he said, Hans. And ever since I had that experience, I have gone back there again and again to World War II. And sometimes when I'm shamanically journeying with people, it's happened only with 2 people. We've gone back to Velversberg Castle, and we've gone in this castle, and there's like been a Stargate there, and Himmler is there, and he knows about time travel, and he's playing a song as time goes by, that Humphrey Bogart song, and he's telling us to call somebody through the portal, and he's murdering various soldiers, just kind of cutting their necks, and he's making a blood sacrifice and then calling through, and this entity comes through, and it's like a big shining white entity, and I think it's Lucifer. And I have kept going back to this room in this castle, and I've gone back. There were 2 people I've shamanically journeyed with. One guy said to me, there's going to be someone else that's come along that's been in the castle as well. He said they're going to come in a few weeks. And a man from America contacted me, and I went shamanically journey with him. He just wanted to know about his past lives. I went shamanically journey with him, and straight away, as soon as I went through the Stargate in the lower world, we went back to Velversberg Castle. So what this other guy predicted was true, and he was there and had a lifetime there. And we came out, and there was an officer there, and he showed us a skull and crossbones ring, and he put it on the desk, and he spun it, and he said, when are you going to remember to me? And I've looked that up. It's called a top and coming or something like that. But the Nazis were into time traveling, and I started to have more memories going back in time of Hans. I don't know if it's a previous life or a walk-in experience, because when I was 19, I read a book called Strangers Among Us, written by Ruth Montgomery. And it was about, if you want to kill yourself, you just have to say you're going to give up your body. So I did a whole ritual around it. And I said, I want to die. This was at 19. And I did feel something come into me. And so I don't know if I've walked in from that Nazi life or it's a past life, but I recalled going back when I was younger, and I had a sister called Clara, and we were twins. And Joseph Mengele, I think it was Mengele, he certainly looked like pictures I've seen, and I felt that vibe. He took us in this room, and he took my sister first, Clara, and Clara came out on a stretcher, and she was dead. And then I went in the room, and he put an electric shock needle through my face, and then he raped me as a boy, and he kept saying that I was his favorite. And I was watching a thing called the OA, and it was interesting. The second series, there was a guy called Hap, and Hap had these people as his experiments, and he time jumped through lifetimes. Like, he was there in one lifetime, then he time jumped to another lifetime where he handled them again. And I thought, has this happened to me in my life? That in that Nazi life, I was obviously experimented on and then used for my gifts in Velversberg Castle. They wanted to call through these portal, Lucifer, basically, they wanted to call in. And then in this lifetime, I'm used again. And people use lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And what is the Nazi involvement? I mean, when I journey, and I haven't done it for a long time, I go to the underworld, and literally I go through a water portal I call a Leviathan gate, and it spins, lights up, and then I plummet down in what is a tesseract. So it's like a 5-dimensional thing that spins, and then I go down with the person I'm journeying with, and then we go into a cave and then out into the lower world. And in the lower world, there's a black pyramid, and we go in there, and in the bottom of the Black Pyramid, there's a building that looks like the Washington Pentagon building. And we go in there, and at the back, there's a Nazi man in Nazi uniform. He will lead us down a corridor. There's a painting at the end. We walk through the painting and into what I call the Stargate room. And there's a big Stargate, and there's Nazi officers all around. And you have to ask permission in one of the offices, which has got the Nazis in them. And the Stargate works. You literally activate it. It spins. You go inside it. And when you're journeying with someone, you can see their past lives, or you can take them and see their future lives. You've just got to have the intent, and then you take them. And you have to ask permission before you use it. And I've been taking people down there, and they're like thrilled because they're having their lives illuminated. Like, you know, people have come back to me and done it again and again, and we've seen their past lives, and often these past lives join. They have a continuity in them, which is fascinating. And one woman's writing a book about it now, which I don't know will be out soon, but she's got my journeying transcribed, because I'm narrating it and I'm doing it, because they obviously haven't got that ability. But I find it fascinating, and I don't do it anymore, but I find it fascinating that why are Nazis in this? Why is there an underworld that we don't know about? Why are there Nazis there? Why is there a Stargate? Why don't we know about these things? And what's actually going on in this world? I mean, last week I had an experience where I found myself on a planet, and I recognized it as Mars. And I was looking down at the Earth, and I was with a group of people, and they said, "You haven't got long here. You've been down there for a purpose, and you believe that you're Christine because its Earth is surrounded by a force field, and this force field is keeping us in quarantine, and it's keeping the density really low, and it's increasing. And these are end times, and dark ET are coming to entrap souls because they realize about the confusion. They're coming now around the Earth to feed off humanity and entrap some people as they go into the astral. And they're saying that the Chinese are going to rise up, the red dragon is going to rise, we're going to have a communist new world order, and AI is going to come in and basically kind of be a vessel for dark ET to come in and to hijack souls. Really, it's because it's end times, it's a feeding frenzy for souls. So people really have to be careful, and you know, people have to wake up from this frequency thing we're in and realize it's a dream, and start doing meditation, start connecting to Christ. Christ said, "I am the gate," so therefore he means follow his word, and then we get out of this thing that we're in. And they were explaining to me on Mars about it, that it's like a seal. So there's a seal around Earth, and it traps us in a lower frequency, and it traps us in time, which is a non-reality. It's not real. So we believe in this Disney world, but it's actually not real, because we're trapped, we're sealed in this thing, quarantined, and we're trapped here. But there is a way out. Jesus reading the word, and sort of, you know, he said, "I'm the gates," getting out that way. But it would be good if we were told about this, rather than just told, you know, "Oh, that's the occult, it's woo-woo, shouldn't know about it, it's not real." AI used to be, Chat GPT used to be good and informative about this, even though you could feel the taste of the demonic energy in it. But now they've given us a safer version, which is worrying. We, the people, have the rubbish version now, but they, behind the scenes, are creating a vessel for this very intelligent beings to come into our world. Like, we create vessels, humans create vessels all the time. We create babies and consciousness comes in. Like, now we've created this AI through this whatever, I don't know how they've done it, but it's coming in now, and it's something really dark that is going to rise up, the red dragon, and it's going to entrap us all into this like new world order, communist kind of a system instead of capitalism. So there's going to be a big change for everybody coming down the line.
That's horrific, but it actually, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It's very aligned with bits and pieces that I've heard before. You know, you hear about the New World Order, you hear about how AI is, you know, maybe not these two conversations together, but you hear how AI is actually a control mechanism. It's not something that we have that's going to be given to us as a means of freedom. It's a way to entrap us more. And so that's really interesting to think of it as like a sentient being almost, that's growing, that we're feeding it. our energy, our attention, our information, and it's gathering all of that and becoming something very powerful that can use all of that for their agenda and not to actually better us.
Yeah, of course, it's dangerous. And of course, now we've been given the weaker version. It's even scarier because behind the scenes, what are they doing? You know, they're only pumping it up. They're crazy, and they're going to use it against us. You know, they're going to use it to crush us even further. It's really scary times, actually.
Yes. Now you have currently and before, you've had, in your adult life, you've discovered these incredible abilities that you have that you may not have known for, a period of time that you were actually using. You might not have had the vernacular for what it was, and things that, gifts that you have. Whenever you were younger, do you remember being used for any of those gifts? Did the people that abused you in these programs have any knowledge that you had these gifts, and did they try to exploit them in any way?
I don't know. I can't remember. I mean, there's great swathes of my life that I can't remember. And I put it down to, well, I was being beaten, I was being sexually abused, so I can't recall. But yeah, I can't remember. I just blank space.
Yeah. What memories do you have from that period of your life in childhood? Do you remember any locations or events that happened to you? Um, I know there's a lot of survivors that watch all these little things that are kind of puzzle pieces, and you don't have to go into great detail, but do you have any memories from your time in MK Ultra or Monarch?
Oh, do you mean yeah, there was a time, and of course I remember the abuse. I mean, because I've spent ages digging to get it, and of course, you know, I remember the beatings and that kind of thing, and my father abusing me. But every day it's hard to recall. But I do remember a time which I thought was really odd when I was 12, 13, and I had to go to my aunt's convent in Boston, and they all came. So the family came, and we got taken to Disney World in Miami, which was nice. And then we went back to Boston. And what I thought was strange, I was taken to a special place. They were put in a cottage. I was taken to a dormitory, and it was like, oh, you can be with the other nuns. But there's no other nuns in the dormitory. And I was given a veil, I was given anointed with oils, and I thought, oh, I'm going to now take my vows to be a nun, because I thought, I don't mind staying here. And they kind of dressed me up with all this stuff and this white gown. And then they went, oh, you can go to bed now. And so I went to bed, and I was lying in the dormitory, and there was singing. It was beautiful singing. It was so beautiful. And they came in with candles and that kind of thing. And I thought, oh, this is part of me being a nun. How lovely. And then they went, and I just blacked out, and I don't remember anything. And then I woke up the next morning, thought I was going to stay there as a nun. And they were like, no, 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 you're not going to be a nun. And just used petty excuses. You like the Beatles, so you can't. I mean, it was just lies. But I often think about that because there was a priest present. There was a man there. And I often wonder, was that kind of something sexual where they, you know, I mean, it seems it to me, but of course, you know, there's a blank.
And you've mentioned too that even at the orphanage, there was abuse, that they'd take you to the orphanages. Was that the staff partaking in that as well of the orphanage?
Yeah, that was weird. I mean, we had to go back there a couple of times a year, and again the memory cuts off. I was told focus on the jelly, green jelly, and ice cream. Focus on that, and that was weird. And then when we went there, we were taken away from our parents and taken somewhere, and then we were given the jelly and ice cream after. And to just think of that, just think of the jelly and ice cream. And I remember a woman there called Valerie. And I've got a picture of her actually, even with my mother. And I keep trying to get her second name out of the Crusade of Rescue. And they're saying, no, 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 it was all nuns. It was only nuns and only priests were there. You're remembering wrong. But it was a civilian woman. I remember she had glasses, and she used to take me by the hand off to a place. But I don't remember. I just remember going with her. and then coming back. And then now you've been good, so you get your jelly and ice cream. And I hated it. I mean, I hate going. I hate the goddamn jelly and ice cream. It just seemed there was something weird about it. Like, why do you have to focus on it? I don't want it. I don't like it, actually. It was a bit of a nightmare. So I look back and think, what was that about? Really, was it about?
Was there, and I'm guessing there was other children there with you too?
Yeah, there was, yeah, other children.
That's horrifying to think about. And obviously, if they know that these kids that are coming are dissociative, or that they have that ability to get them to focus on ice cream and jelly, could almost be a trigger to kind of leave your body and, you know, compartmentalize whatever the memory was that happened. So you're not aware. You just think you were going and got these desserts. And, you know, from hearing a lot of these stories that from different survivors, you know, that's right in line with the different abuses and how they coerce children to, you know, do things against their consent and things that no child should ever be doing.
Yeah.
I'm
I
really
think it's something about the color green. You know, why was it green jelly? You know, why not red goddamn jelly?
Oh.
Yeah, I know. It's strange. And I really didn't like going there because my mother used to say, oh, we'll drop you off there. You've been bad. And I was terrified until I was coming back. And then I used to see, like, they used to ask them for money. You know, there would be a kind of an envelope in the hallway and my parents would put money in it, which I thought was strange. And I did also think something was strange when I was writing to Colonel Michael Aquino in emails, and he wouldn't say much to me. I said, look, can you talk about this thing? And he said, if I ever spoke about Monarch Project, he said, I would be dead in seconds. They'd come and kill me. And he said, which part of it are you referring to? Are you referring to someone getting a pack of cards, shuffling them and pulling out the Queen of Hearts and saying it's the Red Queen? Is that what you mean? And I read his email and I just went totally disassociated. I felt as if I'd been plunged in ice cold water and I couldn't come out of it. And I rang Fritz Springmeier at the time and he said, keep saying to yourself, you've done a good job, you can stand down now. So I was just, there I was, like, shivering. And it felt like I was immersed in cold water. And I kept saying, you've done a good job now. You're going to do a good job. Stand down, stand down. And eventually my body calmed down. So that was really weird. And it was very weird because I was calling myself the Queen of Hearts in this radio show with Revolution Radio in America that Douglas Deidres had given me. Somebody said, call yourself Queen of Hearts. So I literally had this motive and a big banner with me as the Red Queen with the tarot card of it. So that was kind of strange. I think that might have been one of my activating Red Queen, an activating thing. But I remember my mother telling me that she had to have cold baths, ice cold baths, when she was younger. She said, oh, my mother put me in ice cold baths quite a lot and I had my head shaved off. And I remember thinking that that was weird. I don't remember having ice cold baths, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if she gave me them because she was so screwed up, you know?
Right. Yeah, that is very interesting, especially now, even through Fritz Springmeier's work, where he talks about the different Disney programming and Alice in Wonderland. And I don't think it's a coincidence that somebody like Michael Aquino would be possibly trying to trigger you with known programming that we know of in that movie.
I think,
you know?
though he said, oh, I don't know anything about it, one time when I was laying in bed one time, this is before he spoke to me, there was suddenly a white rabbit appeared and I was just about to go to sleep and there's this giant white rabbit in front, like my mind's eye. And I thought, oh, it's gross because I don't like rabbits. And it had a pink nose and those red eyes. And I thought, oh, it's gross. And I thought, did I see a rabbit early on in the day? And now I'm regurgitating it. And I got up, splashed my face with cold water, went back again. And there it was again. And I thought, oh, this is revolting. And then suddenly it shot off horizontally. And part of me came out of my body and went after it. And then as it was going across land, it suddenly went boom like that and went down. And it went down, right through the earth. And then I came out in this kind of room, and Aquino was standing opposite me, and he said, "What do you want out of life?" And I said, "Love, I suppose." And he said, "Well, follow me." And I followed him down this passageway, and we got to the end of it, and we were looking out over the universe. And he said, "If you get in this," and he showed me, I think it was a tesseract now, I'm thinking, or maybe it was his Merkaba. And he said, "Climb into that." He said, when you do, you can go anywhere in time and go inside anyone's consciousness that you want, even kings and queens. And I was just about to get in there. And I said to him, "Hang on, this doesn't seem right. It's not really right to do this. What about Jesus Christ?" As soon as I said that, I found myself whacked back in my body in bed. So that was quite interesting and I became fascinated to research why is a rabbit used. And it's actually used because children like rabbits, and children think, "Oh, how sweet a rabbit," and they'll literally follow it, and they'll go to the underworld with the rabbit. Literally what Alice does.
Yeah, follow the white rabbit down the rabbit hole. You know, it's all programming and triggering, and straight from that movie. That is wild. And then Queen of Hearts too. And you didn't even,
No.
you thought that, you know, whether, I'm sure we don't know one way or another, but it seems like that was a name that was maybe used for you, and it sort of came up in your life and seemed organic, but probably followed you throughout your life also.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. It's strange. I mean, the whole thing of it is weird. The whole thing of that the elites know about this world. They probably know about the lower world and the upper world. Well, they do, for God's sake. I mean, look at the Kabbalah. I mean, the Kabbalah is about the upper world and the lower world, and how to access it, and the dark side. I'm only recently studying the dark side of the tree and the tunnels of Set. And you can go to the lips of the tunnel of Set and meet what's known as your watcher self. And I did that, and I met a being that was actually my higher self. And it's so fascinating. And I thought, how come the average man in the street doesn't know about this? So the elite know about that. So not only are they having great lives and flying around the world, they're also experiencing life on multidimensional levels, while we, the peasants, and they must laugh at us, are having small little lives, like, you know, rubbish food, rubbish, not flying anywhere in our little grey little lives, and having to pay loads of rent. And we're not having that multidimensional experience of existence that they're probably taught about from childhood. I mean, how is that fair? It's kind of really sick. I mean, it's not right. And they're using some of us as actual slaves because we don't know any better. They're using it like human trafficking because we're dumb. We're like dumb animals, and we don't know any better. If we knew better, we'd probably wake up out of it. You know, I would think, when I was busy targeting Real IRA commanders, I'd think, what am I doing this for? And it's weird how the whole using people comes in. I literally just had this feeling, oh, it'd be a great idea if I go out there. It'd be a great idea if I write about that person. I could write a book about them. I would become rich. And I was literally having these thoughts. And now looking back, well, there was no book. I didn't get rich. So these seem like they were put inside me in dreams, and as if they were to get me to go and do something. And it's very clever the way it works. I mean, it's amazing. But if you're aware of your own mind, thoughts, and thoughts can come from other places, you firstly, you connect to Christ. That's really important. And you can stop it happening. Like now, I know my consciousness, and I am astrally awake. And if something comes in to attack me or what have you, I know to use an entity to attack it back. And I mean, I know it's not normal because other people aren't doing that, but there's people out there that, I mean, it's like the movie Inception. That is what actually goes on. These people use psychic spying. Some people have armies to protect them. I use a jinn to protect me because I'm attacked all the time, especially over this being accused of spying on royals. Well, royals, they use psychics. I haven't had a peaceful night. I'm constantly targeted. Last week, in my sleep life, I was constantly led places in my dream life and brought into rooms where a man would come in and either put on knuckle dusters and go to beat me up or attack me with a knife. And although it's astral and obviously you're not going to die, it's not nice. It's horrible to be on the receiving end of it. So I've had to do a whole load of occultic work to sort of stop that. But then these are really powerful people that I'm, involved with. Their dark worlds. I mean, even looking at the newspapers, they are incredibly powerful. I mean, that's old money that goes back for years and to Freemasons, etc. So I'm just a small person with two Goliaths fighting each other, and I'm sort of squashed in the middle. But I won't be attacked in that way. It's not right.
It's horrible, especially after all that you went through as a child, as an adult. And the whole time you've had a heart that just wanted to do good. You just wanted to be loved and wanted to live out your dreams and, be cared about. And, you were just let down left and right. Everybody that came in your path that you thought you could trust was doing something behind your back, that was nefarious. And you didn't have any way to know that until, after the fact of something bad happening. And it's just really sad that these things are still following you to this day, that you can't just have a reprieve from it. And that, you have this court case coming up and they're still trying to go after you instead of trying to listen to you and giving you a chance to share your story. They're making up a story for their purpose, and to present instead of actually using your own story and your voice.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, these are people that are having nice lives. Like take Nick Davies, he's just got his thing on ITV, one of our channels here, called The Hack, where he's recounting the story of the phone hacking. He's left me out of it. I don't mind that. But he wrote something the other day and he called me blagger. And I wrote to him and I said, I helped you with your book. Why are you calling me a name that rhymes with slag? I said, it's triggering my sexual abuse. And he wrote back to me, this very moneyed man who's having a lovely time because he's like a film star is playing him, David Tennant, in a thing. And he wrote back to me and he said, if I've triggered you, go and ring the Samaritans or ring Mind. Who says that to somebody? It's utterly disgusting. It really is. I just can't believe it. The misogyny involved in it. And yeah, they just don't want to tell your story. They want someone else to tell it. And it just makes you really angry. And I thought, what can I do? What can I do back? And then you get tempted to go down the road of black magic, because obviously, having those abilities, I'm pretty good at. If I wanted to, I could do reversals on him. I could do an energetic reversal. I know how to do that, but I don't really want to get tied into that kind of thing, like interacting with jinn and asking them to go after people and, putting pictures of them in jam jars and binding it with twine and making sigils over it and dropping blood in there and going full bore. But it's kind of hard to have power and to yet other people go away, little girl, you're just a victim. You're in this story and it's a huge story, but I'm going to recount your part in it and I'm going to make you small in it and I'm going to make you dirty in it and I'm going to make you this high in it and you're going to be a maggot and a cockroach in it. Well, I'm sorry, I'm really going to fight back with that. I'm going to use everything I've got. I'm not having that. I was pretty huge on Fleet Street. No, you can't tell my story where I'm little. You're accusing me of huge things and yet I'm little. It's very clever. It's very, very, very misogynistic. And I've said to both these men, come at me, try and make me little in this story, but I will call you out as a misogynist. I'll write about you. I'll blog about you. # misogynist. Keep coming at me. I'll keep coming back at you, which I'm not going to be a victim. I mean, I believe, and I've spoken to people about this, about not buying property, not investing money. I was earning 100 grand a year on Fleet Street, and that's after tax. I've got the accountant records to prove it. And these people have seen it, the complainants against the newspapers, and they know I was powerful, earning big money. And they're kind of saying, oh, you didn't kind of buy a house and you're in poverty. And that's used again. It's like, if you were such a big shot, how come you're just living in a scrubby flat? And how come you're struggling? Why didn't you? But I think that Monarch is involved in that as well. I remember going to buy a house and sitting outside waiting for the estate agent that I could easily have afforded, and having a vision of me being stuck in a coffin and looking at the house and just having this vision. No, you can't buy that. It will be like being stuck in a coffin. Remain free, remain like a gypsy. And so you follow that and you end up not buying property. So you end up poor. And it's kind of clever. It's really clever, because if you're poor, then if somebody wants to tell your story, Nick Davis, Graham Johnson, she lives in a flat over there rented. So how can she be a big shot? She's a tiny person. So you don't even get to tell your story because you're poor. It's really clever the way it's done. I mean, it's seamless, actually. It's human trafficking, but it's seamless because you can't even tell your story. So if you tell your story, people just say, oh, you've absolutely, lost your marbles out there. But I think to myself, actually, I've got nothing to lose. What have I got to lose? I'm being spoken about I'm being made small. I really don't like that, seriously, because I'm living a small life at the moment. I'm in poverty. And so I think, right, I'll do my Rocky Balboa. Come on, let's go. Let's fight. I mean, there's 2 men doing it. There's other men involved in it that, are respectful and recount stories and, are willing to be respectful. James Hanning, he's on the side of the claimants, but willing not to be a misogynist. So why are the others having to abuse me? I've had too much abuse in my life, so I'm not going to take it lying down, actually. So yeah.
Good. Have you had? I know that the media in general, especially in a country as a whole, is very militarized, where a few people own so much of it. But have you had any journalists in your country approach you and want to help you tell your real story, or anybody of significance in your country that's interested in actually telling the truth, or have you been just totally ignored?
There was a man called Michael Gillard who wrote a long piece about me, and he did say she's been victimized and bullied, which was nice. I don't think Michael is respected. He's an ex, broadsheet journalist. I know he's working on a Channel 4 dispatches about the case right now. So I think that's out maybe later in October. But he doesn't know about this kind of thing. I think that would be a little bit outside his, it would take, gosh, I mean, I've even done interviews about Ian Brady. Again, that was Channel 4, a woman called Helen Heel. And I've talked to her about believing, because, I've been up close to Kenneth Bianchi as well, that entities are involved in these people. Like with Brady, I felt that there'd been an entity, but it had left. And so he was just like a normal man. But when I met Kenneth Bianchi, the entity was still there. And you can feel it. I felt it when I was sitting with him. It was like at one point, a million razor blades was coming at me all at once. And I felt as if I wasn't top of the food chain, that there was entities that would eat me if they got a chance. And it literally followed me home. And I started to have these visions. They were terrifying, actually. I would be sitting, I've got a friend called Paul, and we would go out and have coffee. And suddenly I'd look at him and I would see him stretched out on the cross, bleeding, going, help me, help me. It was like I was trapped in the movie The Exorcist. And then I would see men buried to their neck in the desert and burned by the sun. They were horrific visions. And it was this entity that had followed me home from meeting Bianchi. I felt, because I could smell it. I could smell Bianchi. I could smell it, and it was non-human. And I had to go to a Catholic priest I know and explain what had gone on. And he said, it's a demon. He said, the demons come into them, and that's why they kill. And I think I absolutely believe them, because often these so-called serial killers, they're 25 years of age, they're boys, they're always adopted, so they've got a big hole in them, a trauma hole, and these entities come in and they feed off women, they feed off children, and then they leave, because these entities, these dark ET, they're not really demons, they're dark ET. They see us as food. They see our souls as food. They've got that adrenochrome thing, and they drink the blood, and that's what they're doing through these young men that we call serial killers. And then we do silly programs saying, oh my God, they're so scary, but they're just men, for God's sake. They're these weak men, and the entities come through them. And I've tried to tell when I do these interviews with, when TV want to interview me about meeting them, as another one come around recently about Bianchi, they want to make a documentary about it. And I think, well, I want to talk about the entity that came into him. And then they accuse you of sticking up for them. Like, oh, Christine, are you fond of him and you want to fight his corner? But it's not actually about that, for God's sake. It's about raising awareness. And there's such a, America is better than the UK. I mean, I've lived in America. The people are much wider with their consciousness. But in the UK, oh my God, they're so narrow-minded. You'd think that all that exists in the UK is your house price going up and a dinner party and Marks and Spencer's. And this is all they think about mostly. I know listeners to your show will be totally different, but there's a lot of that that goes on. We're like, anything outside that box and you're called crazy. And I recently did a diploma in psychotherapy. And whenever in the group we discussed something, like one time I was counseling a woman and she was having horrific nightmares, horrific, and I recognized them as demonic. Again, she was getting horror. Now, horror is always an entity because that's, they bring that. And so I said to her, why don't you, she was Catholic. So I said, get holy water, get rosary beads, put them under your pillow, say a prayer to Jesus before you go to sleep. Now, she'd had these nightmares for 3 years. She did that. I rang her the next day and she goes, oh my God, you've cured me. She goes, I have slept for the first time in 3 years. All the horror has gone. And I said, well, keep praying, keep the rosary beads. And I went back and told my counseling teacher the next day. She was nearly going to throw me out of the class. I was accused of witchcraft by another woman in the group. She said, that's witchcraft, what you've used. I went, well, you just insulted loads of Catholics. She went, beads, water. And I thought, was a Catholic thing. But the teacher was really angry with me, really angry. I literally had to backtrack and pretend that she had thought of the beads, she had thought of the holy water, because I was on the verge of being thrown out of the class and I wouldn't have graduated. This is how narrow-minded the English are. This is how and it will be our demise, really, because we don't see anything. We're just so tunnel vision, and it's really lonely being in the UK because this is the way they think. It's almost like even religions and the spiritual people, they keep it in a little box. Even, I mean, you know, you're out there on your own, really. I mean, I've been invited for Brian Singh, the Chinese guy who's doing disclosure, to go to Miami and speak next year. And I thought, how nice to hang out with Americans, because their consciousness is wider. They're just more awake than we are here. I don't know why it is.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. I've wondered what people in other countries think about America, because sometimes me living here, I just see everybody's still so bought into the, you know, two-party political system, the news, and it's like just these insane culture wars of all different kinds, religious, political, race, gender. It's like just so over consuming with everything. And I'm like, gosh, you know, other countries must like laugh at us and, you know, think that we're ridiculous.
You're
But
ahead
I think
of you're
I
ahead
do
of us.
see there
Oh.
does seem to be a lot of people here outside of that too. You just don't hear about them quite as much unless you're, you know, scouring the internet and in these truther and disclosure communities. But it is a lot of Americans that are stepping up and speaking out and, you know, hosting podcasts or willing to report. You know, there are actual journalists here who are trying to do a good job and trying to get this information out. But I mean, it's just so hard. And I know the UK, it must be even harder just because freedom of speech and different laws are still, you know, permitting in a different way than they are here in America.
I think the journalists as well. I mean, when Stephen Greer came here, I got a commission by the Mail to go and interview him. And it was weird because the night before I was laying in bed, it got to 2 a.m. in the morning, I couldn't sleep, looked out the window and I thought I saw lace over the moon. And suddenly the lace moved and I thought, what the hell is that? And I stood up, looked out the window and there was these orbs that were like moving. And I just ran downstairs out in the garden, tried to take, well, I did take pictures of them and I taped them. And as I was taping them, I said, hey, come and get me, ET, come and get me, it's boring down here. And I rang up the local paper and they'd had reports of other people seeing the orbs. And they did a story on me and they said, oh, listen to the tape of her, it's priceless. And she begs to be taken by ET. I don't mind being laughed at, but in the body of the story, they said there was a Billy Ocean concert on. What Christine was looking at was spotlights and she mistook them for orbs. What the hell? What the hell? The concert had ended at like midnight and then they added in something else. They went, it was probably also the rugby stadium. They test their lights in the middle of the night. And actually, oh crap. I rang the rugby stadium. I said, do you test it? It was an orb. It was right the way up in the sky. They were so amazing. They went up and down. And I don't know if they connected with Greer. He says he can control them. So, I mean, who knows? But that when they disappeared, they went like that really fast. They were jaw-dropping. It's the most exciting thing I've ever seen in my life. I was blown away. And I just thought I would give this story to this local paper. And he added it in that it was the rugby ground testing their spotlights. And I rang them and they said, no, we don't test spotlights in the middle of the night. And how could a spotlight look like that? I mean, I know what I'm saying, but this is how you're degraded. And I rang the journalist. I said, I used to work on Fleet Street. I said, and mate, I said, you could have got a really good story there. I said, and people from different countries might have followed up on it. But you know what? I say, you will stay as a local newspaper journalist. And I felt quite a bitch, but I just thought, why do that? You know, why doesn't he write a proper story? Apparently, they're seen in Richmond a lot. A lot of people report the orbs. So that's interesting, isn't it?
It's very interesting. One of the most fascinating things from doing this podcast in particular and interviewing so many survivors that have gone through things similar to you or different, but with the organized abuse, ritual abuse, MK Ultra type programming or scenarios, there's a lot of crossover with UFOs and aliens and these programs. You know, and in my opinion, I feel like all of it leads back to the government. The government's trying to have us look everywhere else. Look at Epstein, you know, for child trafficking. We're not doing anything. He was. We need to arrest him. And oh, he's dead. So let's just move on with our lives. And then with UFOs and stuff and, you know, aliens, it's always, oh, look up in the sky. It's coming from somewhere else. And, you know, I don't think it's a coincidence that so many adult survivors have testified that they have either been abducted or have seen phenomena as adults, or as children, they were made to interact with advanced technology or programmed with advanced technology that doesn't or didn't yet exist to the public. You know, I feel like there's a lot that goes into who they let see these things, who has the ability to see them, and that it's like very deliberate who they have interact with these different, you know, technologies and stuff. And then they gaslight you after that, which is just horrible, you know?
Totally. And I think you're right. I mean, Douglas Dietrich is quite good at talking about, you know, the off-world entities and the greys. And I've been on the ship with the greys and putting probes in me and that kind of thing. But I think that they are bots. I think they're a cover. I think they're used by this probably advanced race that is you know, whether they're Anunnaki or what they are. I think they're interdimensional and I think they are demonic. I was watching that Mayfair Witches recently, and there was a character in there called Lasher who just kind of just burst into the air and he started changing shape and he said, I'll never let you see what I am. And I thought that's exactly like them. And I think the government probably interact with them and they don't tell us about them.
Exactly. Yes. And then they have us look everywhere else. Like, we're not doing anything. We don't know anything either. Look up there, when in fact, I think that there's, a lot of different energies and spirits and beings, and non-human intelligence and sentient beings that, like how you were saying with information, there's so much that's suppressed from the public. And if just a little bit that we know about, that we're asking questions about, such as, like, a Jeffrey Epstein story, or a Franklin scandal, whatever it is that's sort of been manipulated in the news, you have to wonder what all exists that they're not telling us about. Who are they working with? What else is here that they're hiding from us? And I think that it's a pretty simple conclusion to think that there are beings and technologies that we don't know what to do with it when we see it, but it's coming from them. They're well aware, and they've been for decades, that these beings and technologies exist. But to us, it's like literally alien to us, because we're like, oh my gosh, what is that orb, or what is this being? This is crazy. And they're like laughing at us.
Exactly. And I think the scary thing is that these beings, I think that they imbibe us. I think they eat us, or I think they eat our fear. So these serial killers are little conduits for them. But also, like out in Gaza, I think they're literally opening portals, and they're coming through and feeding on these. You've seen the children, they're literally holding up children, and they're headless and rags and all that. And I know it was terrible what happened on October the 7th, but this is part of it, you see. And they fed on those people too. It's humans, no matter what race, they're being offered as sacrifices to others that are interacting with them. And I think that probably the human beings at the top that are interacting with them probably don't have a choice. And I think there's a lot of human beings right now with us that actually are hybrids for these beings. So they're actually helping. And it's a very dangerous situation, because I think they don't mean us well. I think they hate us. And you only have to look at what's happening out in Gaza, and people think it's not going to spread. But it is. That wind that's coming in there, it's going to go global, like COVID. It's global. And I think we're reaching the end times with these beings. And there's a movie called Oblivion with Tom Cruise, and he's in the ship and he's with one of them. And again, they've got this weird kind of a frequency. It's kind of horrible. And they're evil for sure. And he's been watched by one of them, and he doesn't realize, and he escapes from the ship, and he goes and meets people that are fighting, and he said, don't you realize what's happened? There's been an alien takeover. And Oblivion is really good for explaining what they're like. They screw with our minds and our consciousness, and they can hack in and access us. And also there's another series called on Netflix called Colony, and that is about an alien takeover as well, that they can't see them, but there's all of a sudden new rules in place, and there's drones going everywhere. I mean, that's happening now, for God's sake. But the people are aware there's been a takeover by them. I mean, I think they're fully on our planet right now. And I think they've got something really dark planned for us. I mean, look at the COVID and all what followed it. I think they want to, depopulate us. They want rid of us, and they just see us as cattle, absolute cattle. I mean, What can we do? It's game over as well. I mean, we can only just pray. I mean, we're just left with that. What can we do? I mean, we can't do anything. They probably laugh at us talking about it.
Oh, I'm sure. But at the same time, it's encouraging that, you look at just 5-10 years ago, even just a couple years ago, the amount of people who were not awake to this versus that are now. So at least we have communities that we can connect with. We can try to work together. I think that this has to crack somehow. Like, we have to get this information about what you and others have gone through in their childhood and be able to present that to the public. We need brave journalists. We need brave podcasters. We need people willing to give a voice to this suppressed information that's been occulted by powerful people. There's people that are profiting off the backs of children like you whenever you were little, and they're getting away with it. And they've been for decades. People have lived and died their entire lives, or lived their whole entire life and then died, taking these secrets to the grave with them and not ever being held accountable. And we need that to change. We need journalists like you, Christine, who are willing to risk their life to get a story out, you know, and who weren't afraid of Big Brother or being ostracized by the industry. You know, it just takes one amazing journalist to come forward and do it, and somebody else to join them. And then pretty soon you have more people on the outskirts of mainstream journalism than actually in it. You know, it's just finding the courageous people. Everybody's too scared to ruffle the feathers, you know, and it's really amazing. Even though what you were doing, you were being used for their purposes, and they were doing you a disservice by, you know, putting you in these situations as a young woman. But at the same time, I look at like, wow, the courage that you had to do that, you know, that you were willing to risk your life to get a story out. And it was that important to you. And it's just like, how sad that that's so rare these days, that people are so, they're too cowardly to try to do the right thing and stand up for good. You know, they'd rather cower to Big Brother and to mainstream media. They don't want their reputation to be ruined or to be ostracized when, you know, and they end up just doing wrong, you know, and it's horrible.
And I've probably got victims that I was psychic spying on that I don't know I was psychic spying on. Like Diana, for instance, Princess Diana. It's been written about in the Palace Papers by Tina Brown. Oh, I told Diana this, and you know, she's at a vulnerable time in her life. I mean, they totally got the story wrong. I was given her number and her bedside number and told to ring it and see if she was there or not, which I did. But I'm thinking now, because I was psychically reading her because just out of curiosity, but what if I was actually doing that for somebody else? I mean, you know, I was on the phone to her for about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. So what if I wasn't just doing a job for the Sunday Mirror at that point? What if I was doing a job for somebody else? I mean, certainly as regards the Real IRA, I was all over them. I mean, I know people obviously don't have pity for paramilitaries, but, you know, there was politicians, but people don't want this story. I mean, they just don't want it, you know.
They don't want it to get out because it could take down a lot of people and a lot of institutions and, you know, a lot of power if this was to come out mainstream and people stood beside you and were an army for you. You know, they want the army behind them. And so their only defense mechanism is to gaslight you and to make you to change your story. I mean, if they were, why is it so scary to share your actual testimony? They have to change it. I mean, that just shows how powerful your voice is, that they can't even, if they're going to put your story out, they have to completely manipulate it before they have the courage to actually put it out there, you know?
Yeah, it's sad. It's depressing.
Very sad.
It's victimizing me again. You know, it's been going on quite a long time. I've been depressed over it because not only do I not have my career that I thought was my career, but apparently it's just me being hijacked. But not only do I not have that, I'm not allowed to have the memory of it because they tell it in a different way. And that has been really hard as well. I've had to relearn thinking about things in different ways, that just because somebody's saying that out there about you, it doesn't, you know, you don't have to take it in your heart. But it's been, you know, it's been a long road, really. It's been hard. It's been hard.
What ways do you have to combat this? And what can people do to support you with this case coming up, with your story? What do you need? What can we do for you?
Well, if people want to make donations, that's great. You know, that would be awesome. I do have rent. My rent has gone up now another £200 a month. It's been going up 200 a couple of months ago, so that is difficult. I've got back rent, apparently £2,000 that I owe. So if anybody wants to donate through, I suppose they could get in touch with you and you could give them my details. That would help. And I guess just friendship, you know, I mean, I'm on Facebook, Christine J. Hart, and there's a picture of me, of course I'm wearing glasses, but, you know, if people just want to hit me up in Messenger, you know, it's always nice to talk to people. And also people that have had these abilities and have got these powers. I mean, one time, you know, when Miles Johnson was friendly with him and there was bases, there was a guy came to me and said, you know, we go out at nights and we do astral realm walking. Do you want to come? And I thought, can you really go out in groups? And he came to me literally at 12 o'clock and I felt myself being pulled out of my body and we went out. So that also, people with abilities who get together with other people with abilities, that can be quite exciting because it literally can start stretching your consciousness. So that is fun.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible. It's amazing learning from you and others who have developed these abilities and who know about them. It's really restored my kind of love for humans. I feel like whenever you go to school, I went to school for exercise science and had biology classes and anatomy classes, and they kind of paint humans as just these like little 3D creatures. There's nothing really special about us. Here's some muscles and bones, and that's all you are, you know, and you have these 5 senses and that's it. You're so limited and like useless. And it's amazing to hear what our bodies are capable of, you know, even under trauma, to learn that our bodies are capable of dissociating, that we have such strong survival mechanisms in our body that we're not even taught about in school, you know, and then to learn about these different senses that we have way more than 5 senses. We can use way more than 10% of our brain, like how they tell us. And it's really magical. It's really neat to learn, you know, what we're capable of, and that there's people out there that are doing good in the world using those skills and those talents. And that, you know, I encourage people to support you. And you work with people. You have a business that you take clients and you're able to do some of these things that you were sharing today about, right?
Yeah, I can take them through stargates and, you know, look at their past lives, which is interesting to them. People learn a lot and people understand about their current lives, you know, how does that match up with their current lives, what they're doing? And sometimes they connect with that past self and it enhances their life in the present. And also when I take them to the higher realms, what I always do with them is open a portal once we're in the higher realms and ask whatever is connected to them to come through. And on occasions, you've had angels come through. On occasion, I've had Jesus come through. And they literally, one girl, when Jesus came through, I said, Jesus is laying his hands on your heart right now. And she started really deeply sobbing. So you have all these physical reactions that prove it to you, you know, that what's happening is real. And I remember after that, we came down through that portal. We were walking out through the forest and I saw a lamb, and it was a really strange lamb. And I started to become really overwhelmed. And I started to become, sorry, my son's got home. I started to become really overwhelmed. And then I felt a deep love inside me. And then I started really weeping. And I spoke to a priest after, and he said, that's the Lamb of God. Very few people have seen that. And it really deeply affected me, actually. It was quite interesting. So people have these really strange spiritual awakenings after journeying with me. And some people have been connected with the Templars, and you literally see armies around them. And it's a really interesting thing. It's interesting. So yeah, it's exciting.
What's the best way people could contact you from a business or client perspective if they wanted to hire you?
Yeah, well, I have a website, Christine Joanna Hart, and so they can contact me through there, and also on Facebook, you know, Messenger. That's my website, yeah, so they can contact me through there. And it's also got my phone number there. They can WhatsApp me. I'm a really big fan of WhatsApp. I think it's great. So I've got mainly on there, you know, my credentials as a psychotherapist because I'm in the UK, so they don't like anything woo-woo. But I've also got shaman and remote viewer on there. So, you know, I keep it low key because I'm in the UK and they don't like anything out of the box.
Totally. I don't blame you. And I think this way too, you can appeal to different types of people who, you know, psychotherapist, clairvoyant, shaman, medium, that sort of hits all demographics, people who might not be as woo-woo-y, or
Yeah.
people that, you know, have a more open mind to these other services that you do.
Well, that's why I studied as a psychotherapist, because I thought, you know, I'm helping people, but I want to nail it down, you know. So I was
Yes, you have the
studying.
credential.
Yeah. And you need that. And I needed it. And actually, you know, I'm working in a school at the moment, so I'm helping children. And, you know, it's great to use your ability to, as well, to see what's going on with them, to help them, you know, to really help them, because people have, you know, sort of boundaries up that, you know, have to be melted away so you can find out, you know, so you can get to the trauma. And I like doing that, you know.
Absolutely, yes. And another service that you offer us that is incredible is a whole library of free videos that you have compiled yourself. You've posted interviews from others on your YouTube channel. It's just a wealth of different videos, and I'd love for you to talk about that for a minute too.
Yeah, so I haven't got a very good banner on there, but yeah, I went on Gareth Ike the other day, but if you scroll down, there's a lot of interviews. I did one with gosh, Brian Harvey, about his experiences. I've got a lot of Max Spears on there, his old interviews, so that's quite interesting. There's a few of me moaning. I know I shouldn't do. I should, you know, remove those. So don't bother listening to those. But the interviews are pretty good and they're interesting. Have there Brian Barrett, he's a magician. We were talking about the jinn, which I think these jinn are also the extraterrestrials, are also the demons. So we're talking about intradimensional beings. So, you know, they're all one and the same, actually, you know, and I don't think there's good guys like, oh, there's the Pleiadians, they're the good ones, and there's the Draco Reptilian, they're the bad ones. I think they're all one and the same, actually, you know, apart from the Greys, which I think are bots. I don't think they are a particular race. But yeah, it's interesting.
Do you want to quickly, we didn't talk about him much in the show, but you had a relationship with Max Spears, and he's obviously somebody that really pioneered and paved the way for the movement that we have today. I'd love for you to maybe just share a little bit about his impact on your life, you know, and anything that you'd want to share with people who maybe never got to meet him, or you know, have only met him through an interview or two that he's done.
Yeah, I mean, he was a really, really good man. You know, he didn't have any badness in him. He was just, you know, quite angelic. Sometimes when I did shows with him, I used to roll my eyes and think, oh God, Max, you know, you're so sort of, where's your dark side? He didn't have a dark side. And I was being trolled at one point around when we were doing shows together for Revolution Radio. And he always used to, after we'd done a show, which was 2 hours of talking, and obviously after a show, you're tired and it's like, oh God, but he would always ring me back and say, you know, what's going on with you? Is there anything I can do to help you? And I remember one time saying I was being trolled by this guy. I showed him a picture of him and he said, you do know he's not human. And I said, no, I didn't really know that. And he goes, I'm going to take care of him for you. Leave him to me. And the guy stopped bothering me. So in fact, this particular guy gloated after he died. He sent me messages saying, who's going to protect you now? Your friend's dead, which was pretty horrible. Monica, the woman he died with, rang me on the morning after he died, and she was crying and she goes, you know, he's dead. And she kept saying, sorry. I know Vanessa, his mother, we keep in contact, and she still doesn't know what went on, which is pretty dark. You know, I have interacted with Max on the higher level, and he is a teacher. He's still out there, but he's really high. He's gone up really high. I mean, his frequency was high. So he's teaching on higher levels. I have interacted with him years ago, more around near where he died. But yeah, and then his sister died soon after, so at least they're together. It's pretty horrible. I do believe he was spiritually targeted and taken out, because he actually went mainstream. He went on Channel 4 and he was talking about the reptilians on Channel 4, which must have blown the minds of the media. And so, you know, next thing, he's been taken out, which, you know, spiritual targeting, I think, for sure. It's just horrible.
It's really horrible how much people are targeted just for telling the truth. You know, it's a crime. They're treated worse than the actual criminals that they're exposing, which is really horrific. You know, and Max and so many others risked their lives, and their lives were taken for trying to stand up for the right thing and trying to give people a voice, you know, that didn't have one. So I'm really grateful that he got to interact with you and that you were a part of his life. I'm sure you were a bright light for him.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. I remember saying to him, Max, whenever I speak to you, I get the feeling that you're Hatter and I'm Alice. And he said, I find that so fascinating. So we were like characters in Alice in Wonderland. It was bizarre. But it is interesting that people, when they've been through the programs, when they talk to each other, because it's like, you know, something strange happens, and it's really good to swap notes about what's going on. And too often it doesn't happen, you know, that kind of interacting. It's a shame.
Yes. Yeah. They've tried to keep you all separated and segregated and silenced. So, and then they delete your stuff on social media or suppress it. Don't let people find it. And so it's like you're just talking into a void. And then the people gaslighting you and writing hit pieces or not telling the truth about these different things, you know, satanic panic, all this crap. That's what gets mainstream. And then the people actually telling the truth get pushed way down on the algorithms, and it's horrible.
Yeah. I mean, my Twitter, I'm on Twitter and I retweet stuff and I don't get any views. It's weird. There's like 5 views and I've got 4,000 followers. And then I got a note the other day saying, oh, your account's got a temporary label. You know, you've been reposting. I was posting about Gaza. And yeah, nobody sees my Twitter. I don't know why I bother, actually, you know.
Horrible. And another thing that you know, you have a YouTube channel, you have these services on your website. You're an author as well, and you have some books out, and then you have an announcement to make today about another project.
Oh yes, I've done a series called the Psychotherapist series. So I've got books 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They're all based on my life. The first one is called The Royal Spy, which is about the court case. It's about meeting Brady. It's about meeting Bianchi. It's about everything we've talked about today. So that's out now on Amazon. And that's all my other books, like Searching for Daddy and In for the Kill, put together in one big book. So it's pretty long. But it's the first in the series, and then there's the rest in the series, that quite an interesting series. One of them is called The Natural History of Serial Killers, which is about getting to know Kenneth Bianchi, which was quite interesting. So I've worked really hard on the series, actually. I'd like to find a proper publisher, but I did have Hodder and Stoughton with my memoir and Mainstream for In for the Kill, but I haven't put them out there with a proper publisher just because I know that I'm talking about things I shouldn't be talking about. So I've self-published, and, you know, there we are.
Good for you. And these are on Amazon. Are they going to be on your website as well to access, or is it just Amazon?
Amazon. I'd like to put them on my website, but again, I need a developer, and you know, I need to get sorted with that, actually. You know, what I'm doing at the moment, I'm working in a school which is super low pay, and I haven't been taking clients on because I've been tired. I'm going to start doing that again. But you say the money is just completely, you know, not in a great space right now with that.
Yeah. And Christine has a plethora of books. Just even in the series, she said there's 5. So that's a wonderful way you guys could support her and learn something new. There's a lot of information jam-packed in her books, and they all tell a little bit more about her life and her experiences and the things that she's uncovered as a private investigator, as a psychotherapist, as a survivor. There's all different elements of her story intertwined in all these books and these series that she does. And it's a wonderful way that you guys can support her by going on Amazon, going through her library. I would encourage you guys to purchase her new book. It's just coming out as you guys are watching this. Brand new book. So go support her and get it. It's part 1, or volume 1, excuse me, of the series. So you guys can be the first to get it. You guys can share it with somebody. I think these types of books too are really good for waking people up, because there's a lot of truth in them, you know, whenever a survivor writes a book and puts their own story in it. So I would love if you guys did that. And we'll have a donation page below too that you guys can connect with her on. And of course, you guys can just get a hold of me too if you guys want to connect with her. She has her WhatsApp number on her website, so you guys can personally reach out to her and see how you guys can support. And of course, her YouTube channel is free, you know, a really great way to support. Go watch, not just watch her videos, but if you find value in some, or if you think people that you follow on your own social media could benefit, go share those videos on your own social media and help her get more views. Go connect with her on Twitter and Facebook, as she said, and just support. You know, it's such an easy and free thing to do, that we can go on social media or you know, buy a book. It's really easy, that, you know, ways to support. And I know a lot of you always ask me how you can support. So I'm going to, in the show notes, have all of Christine's information for you guys. And I really encourage you guys to support her one way or another, and especially to reach out on social media and tell her what an amazing job she's doing and how her stories impacted you. And if you're a survivor and have a puzzle piece, or if Christine was a puzzle piece for your story, go connect with her. It is really wonderful when survivors can come together and work together and corroborate, and just have that personal understanding of each other that, you know, a lot of survivors don't get in the quote unquote real world. So Christine, it's an absolute honor to have you on. And I feel like I could talk to you for 24 hours straight. So I would love if you could come back on and we could dig more into your story and, you know, talk more about these years in your life now and your healing journey. We didn't really even get a lot into that. And I think there's so much more that we could talk about. So I'd love to have you back on, but wanted to see if there was anything that you wanted to add to today's show that we didn't get to talk about, or any closing words that you had.
Yeah, not really. I think we covered everything. I'm also freezing because we haven't got any heating on here, so I'm gonna have to put a woolly on. But thank you for having me, Emma, and it's been lovely. And you know, it's given me more enlightenment into my story to share it with you. So your energy is great, and so it's helped me a lot. Thank you. And thanks to your lovely audience for listening and bearing with us.
Thank you guys with all my heart for listening and bearing with us. You guys are absolute warriors for survivors and for everybody who comes on this show, and we can't thank you enough. So go in the show notes. Christine's information is going to be there. My information will be there. Connect with us, share, comment, connect, subscribe, whatever you guys need to do. Keep in touch with us and support. So you guys, thank you so much for listening. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.